This new white paper on defence, tabled in the House of Commons by the Minister, presents a new defence policy for Canada. And it's our job now to implement this policy. Let me point out, first of all, that many elements of our policy aren't going to change. The protection of Canadian sovereignty remains fundamental. We will continue to rely heavily on joining our allies in collective deterrence and defence in North America, in Europe, and at sea through our participation in NORAD and NATO. Peacekeeping as well will remain one of our principal priorities, allowing us to promote stability and humanitarianism in those countries that are afflicted by regional or internal conflict. While Canadian security policy must remain flexible to permit us to meet changing circumstances, some elements of our national and geostrategic situations are immutable and inescapable. For example, Canada shares her borders with both superpowers. We have the world's longest shoreline. We're a three-ocean nation. And we have, as part of our nation, the Canadian Arctic, which stretches almost to the North Pole. The government will give us new tools to meet the demands of these circumstances, including a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines, new main battle tanks, and additional long-range patrol aircraft, to mention only a few. The White Paper gives a new emphasis to Canadian defence and renewed importance to the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces. There are exciting times ahead for all of us, and implementing the new policy is going to be a great challenge, but one that we can look forward to in what's going to be a period of growth and change.
Canadian security policy must respond to an international environment dominated by the rivalry between East and West. These two groups of nations are separated by a conflict of ideas and values. They are divided on how politics should be conducted, society ordered, and economy structured. They are divided on the value of personal freedom, on the importance of the rule of law, and on the proper relationship of the individual to the society. In this struggle, Canada is not neutral. Our values and our determination to defend freedom and democracy align us in the most fundamental way with other Western nations. Canadian defence policy will continue to be based on collective security within the North Atlantic Alliance, including the Continental Defence Partnership with the United States. Within this broad framework, Canada will participate in collective deterrence and defence in North America, in Western Europe, and at sea. In the pursuit of a more peaceful world, the Canadian forces will rededicate themselves to the resolution of regional conflicts through peacekeeping. The Department of National Defence, with the Department of External Affairs, will continue its search for effective arms control, which will enhance security and stability and permit lowering the level of armed forces. A free and secure Western Europe remains critical to Canada's future. Our political, cultural, and social ties with Europe are unmatched by those with any other region save the United States. Since the Second World War, however, the Soviet Union has maintained in Central Europe massive armed forces well in excess of their need for defense alone. These forces are seen as a threat to Canadian and Western security. Canada also has growing interests in Asia and the Pacific Rim. This region has, in the recent past, experienced greater change than other parts of the world. Here, too, vast armed forces confront each other, and the already large Soviet naval presence in the North Pacific is growing. The Arctic Ocean is an area of growing strategic importance. Increasing use of the region by submarines, for example, raises both sovereignty and security concerns for Canada. To meet these challenges, Canada must bolster and upgrade its military forces. To meet the maritime challenge, Canada will create a three-ocean navy. Submarines are essential to meet the current and evolving long-range ocean surveillance and control requirements in the Canadian Atlantic, Pacific, and Arctic Oceans. A program of 10 to 12 conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarines will give the Canadian Navy the capability to maintain high-speed underwater operations for sustained periods. A nuclear-powered submarine's endurance, flexibility, and extreme long range can deny an opponent the use of sea areas and can maintain sustained operations under the Arctic ice cap, as well as off our Atlantic and Pacific coasts. 6 new frigates will be built, in addition to the 6 currently under construction, and the 4 Tribal-class helicopter destroyers now being modernized. A fixed under-ice surveillance system will enable Canada to monitor maritime traffic in the Canadian Arctic and meet challenges which require a naval response. New towed sonar arrays and towing vessels will provide improved maritime detection and underwater surveillance. The construction of modern minesweepers outfitted with state-of-the-art equipment will give the Canadian Navy the ability to keep Canadian harbors and their approaches safe and open to Canadian and friendly shipping. A new shipborne aircraft will be produced in Canada to replace the Sea King helicopter, now reaching the end of its useful life. Canada will also improve its surveillance and warning. The Canadian Forces' capability to conduct surveillance of Canadian air, land, and sea jurisdictions to provide warning, assessment, and defense against hostile activity will be improved. Surveillance is not only a contribution to Canadian and collective defense, but it is also an affirmation of Canadian sovereignty. 6 new long-range patrol aircraft will be added to our fleet of maritime aircraft. Our fleet of tracker medium-range patrol aircraft will be modernized and equipped with highly sophisticated radar and tracking systems. This will dramatically reinforce surveillance of Canadian airspace and sea approaches. Canada will also explore the use of space-based systems for land and sea surveillance. These spaceborne systems, for example, will eventually replace the ground-based radars of the North Warning System and will be able to detect enemy cruise missile and bomber forces before they cross our horizon. Options for the surveillance of objects in space will also be considered. In addition, space systems for communications, navigation, and search and rescue will be used. The Canadian Forces are not only responsible for detecting an enemy force which threatens Canada, but they must also meet it and limit the damage an enemy attack could inflict upon us. CF-18 aircraft give that capability in the air, and our maritime forces protect sea approaches. But we must also have a well-trained, well-equipped army able to respond rapidly to threats in any part of the country. For territorial land defenses, Canada will reorganize its land forces to make better use of regular and militia troops. To accomplish this, additional brigades will be created from the militia, which will significantly improve the Army's capability to defend Canada. The Canadian Rangers will be expanded and given improved equipment, training, and support. The Canadian Forces will also establish a Northern Training Centre in the 1990s to train forces for the defense of Canada. For Canada's contribution to NATO, we will consolidate our commitments and reinforce our troops in Central Europe. The current Canadian military commitments in Europe are spread over 2 widely separated regions. The 4th Canadian Mechanized Brigade Group and the 1st Canadian Air Group are stationed in southern Germany. The Canadian Air Sea Transportable Brigade Group and 2 Rapid Reinforcement Tactical Fighter Aircraft Squadrons are committed to northern Norway in time of crisis. Canada also provides a battalion and a tactical fighter squadron to the Allied Command Europe Mobile Force for deployment to NATO's northern region. These widespread commitments in Europe dilute valuable combat resources and needlessly increase the support burden. Deployment, support, and resupply, for example, of our soldiers and airmen committed to Norway is extremely difficult, making timely deployment before hostilities an unreasonable expectation. We have insufficient strategic transport for these widely separated lines of communication. To improve the credibility of our contribution to Allied deterrence in Europe, we are ending the unsustainable commitment to send a brigade group and 2 fighter squadrons to northern Norway. We will instead consolidate our European commitments on the Central European front. In time of crisis or war, the 5e Group Brigade du Canada will join the 4th Canadian Mechanized Brigade Group, permanently stationed in southern Germany. This will enable us to contribute a divisional-sized force to NATO's Central Front. The resulting combat power will be more credible than our existing commitments of 2 separately deployed brigades. Our Europe-based armored regiments will also be re-equipped with new main battle tanks. The numbers of aircraft in 1st Canadian Air Group's fleet of CF-18s will be strengthened in times of crisis and effectively armed. Canada will also shift the commitment of 2 Canada-based rapid reinforcement squadrons from northern Norway to increase Canada's squadron strength within the 4th Allied Tactical Air Force to air divisional size. We will, however, maintain the existing battalion group commitment to the Allied Command Europe Mobile Force for service on the northern flank of NATO and pre-position equipment to support this battalion. Canadian Forces personnel strength in Central Europe will increase to provide land and air divisional elements and larger logistics and medical support services. In most NATO countries, reserve forces outnumber their regular force colleagues. Canada is a notable exception, with only 1/4 as many active reservists as regulars. In many cases, the tasks carried out by the regular force can be undertaken by trained reserve personnel. By introducing a total force concept, their responsibilities will be integrated with those of the regular force. Their training, equipment, pay, and benefits will be increased and improved. The reserves will be expanded to 90,000 members, giving the Canadian Forces a 1-to-1 ratio of regular and reserve personnel. To support reserve expansion, we will study the possibility of reactivating University Reserve training plans like those which existed before 1970. Other aspects of the White Paper on Defense include equitable opportunities for members of both language groups in the Canadian Forces and the Department of National Defense, expanding the role of women in the Canadian military, ensuring the composition of the regular and reserve forces more adequately reflects the ethnic diversity of Canadian society, the development of new emergency legislation to replace the outdated War Measures Act, and to establish Emergency Preparedness Canada, the agency responsible for coordinating the civil aspects of government-wide mobilization. In addition, the department will be consulting and cooperating with various academic, research, and industrial sectors of Canada to broaden and strengthen their relationships with the Canadian Forces and the Department of National Defense.
The tabling of the new White Paper is a great milestone for the Canadian Forces. Each and every one of us, regular and reserve, will be involved directly or indirectly. And I know that in meeting the demands of these exciting new developments, all of you will give that same 100% effort that's earned you the respect of every other nation and the pride of your fellow Canadians. By helping to make our new defense policy work, you'll be making an important personal contribution to the preservation of peace and freedom.